think we're going to get started now, so some great feedback. Thank you for participating today. Our final event, I'm pretty excited for, it's a VC panel discussion with a number of very reputable VCs here in San Francisco. I think to kick things off, maybe we can do a quick introduction on who you are and what type of investments you guys partake in, kind of a little background about your firms. So do you want to start?
Sure, I'll be quick. I'm Cack Wilhelm. I'm with Accomplice. It's an early stage VC firm, 200 million under management. We do business and consumer software and hardware. I personally am more focused on this ecosystem, so lots of AWS, dev tools, data, infrastructure, etc.
Okay, cool. So my name's Andrea Zurek. I'm with a firm called XG Ventures, and the G is an homage to Google. So super early with my business partner. The two of us were early Googlers. And we actually are a little different from this panel because we invest our own capital, so it's considered evergreen. And we've been doing this for the last 10 years. We have 95 companies in our portfolio, sold 20 of them, all early seed stage. And some ones you might recognize would be Facebook, Wish, eShares, and Shift.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Palmeri. I'm a partner at Softtech VC. We're based up here and down in the valley. We're one of the original micro VC funds, currently investing out of a $100 million fund. And it's a generalist fund that focuses on seed stage investing. So we do a combination of B2B and B2C, and I do a combination of that as well.
My name is Ilya Kirnos. I'm with SignalFire. We are a $330 million fund. We'll do everything from seed to growth. Generalists, my own background is software engineering. I was also at Google for many years, so love deeply technical companies.
I think the best way to do this is ask you some questions, and I guess you guys kind of figure out who wants to answer. That way you can take the ones you like, feel like you're tasked with it. So the first I'm curious about, because you guys kind of have very similar but slightly diverse interests in different portfolios. What do you guys generally look for in early stage investments? What interests you, and what are the signs of something that you're interested in investing in?
Well, at Softtech, we have this rule. It's on the back of our business cards. It's called the 3 Asses rule.
Oh, yeah.
And so we invest it, yeah. So and it's sort of the rubric for how we think about a deal. And it's looking for a smart-ass team building a kick-ass product in a big-ass market. And so first and foremost for us, the team is obviously the most important thing. But we're also looking for a certain degree of product market fit and what we consider to be a potentially $1 billion or more opportunity.
How do you, so if it's not a serial entrepreneur who's pitching to you, right, so you don't know if it's a kick-ass team just yet, are there additional signs you look for first-time entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, we're looking for teams that we think have a unique insight and a unique potential ability to execute on the market they're going after. So, some of that comes from the raw passion that a founder brings to the table for their idea and how they want to attack the market. And other times it comes from the companies they've worked for in the past and the people that they've surrounded themselves with. And so we're looking for indicators. I would say the vast majority of our founders are first-time founders. So most of the folks we're investing in have not started a company before, but they're able to back up why they're uniquely primed to start and succeed in building the company.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add, so I came from a later stage venture firm, and I understand the group in the room here is more like sub 10 people, early stages. And so at the later stage, and Ilya, maybe you can comment on this too, is you're thinking a lot more in terms of market. You're looking at numbers. You're looking at actual traction. You're really assessing product market fit and saying, like, can this company scale? But you have actuals in front of you. Now, translate, I just moved to an early stage firm, seeds, not even really Series A, mostly seed. So it's lots of companies like you guys. And then it's Steph's rules, and it's a lot of the, like, is this the right person for this struggle, issue, thing that you're trying to change? And so it's, does this DNA match the problem that they're solving? Is this something that they saw at their prior company, he, she, it, and sort of like piqued their interest? They've known the co-founder for a while. Like, a lot of it is just trying to prevent those real errors of, you're gonna have to fire the CEO, or the two individuals not going to get along. Like, if you can prevent some of those just like class A errors that happen often, that's a lot of what you're looking for in a team. Because it's hard to just assess quality of person.
Don't hate me for asking this question.
No, please.
So what if somebody comes to you and they have a fantastic idea, but they aren't the right person for it? What do you do in that situation? Do you give that feedback to them, or what do you do in that spot? I knew you were going to hate me for asking that question.
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, what I would say is I would read between the lines when you get turndowns from VCs because, yeah, often, they're not going to tell you, nor should they really. It's my assessment on you as a human. Like, who cares what I think? Ask these three and they're going to think something else. But they might couch it as like, market's not big enough or traction isn't there and the underlying reason may be something entirely different.
How do you end up leveraging data to make your investment decisions? What do you look for metric-wise out of these companies? Like what signs do you look for that signal a good investment for you?
Sure, yeah, I mean, SignalFire, we use a lot of data in our process. And I'd say it depends on the stage, the kinds of data that you can use, also the sector. I'd say at the earliest stages, at the seed stage, oftentimes it's important to know that an opportunity even exists. You have a founder who's working on something that's stealth, but they're a high quality engineer who might have just left Google or Facebook, et cetera. That itself is a useful piece of data to have. Clearly, as you have more of a footprint, the company grows, there are other signs of traction you can look at. For us also, I think it depends on the sector. And this is, again, our personal philosophy. We may be wrong, we may be right, but my sense is that if you're starting a deeply technical, let's say, infrastructure company, you're building a new database, you better have a strong engineering team right from the get-go. It goes to this idea of founder market fit. If you're starting a social viral app, I know lots of people that I worked with at Google who were excellent engineers who went off and started social viral apps that didn't go anywhere. I think there you have to base your investment decisions much more on traction. So I think it's different kinds of data play into different kinds of companies and stages.
Are there specific metrics that you recommend that people bring to you when they're making that pitch? Like what are important metrics and information to have to make their product look more appealing to you from an investment perspective?
Sure. So again, in enterprise infrastructure, it may be years before you even build a product. So I think there it's much more important to have a credible background for what you're building. As you begin to have something that's out in market and you have an early group of users, things like engagement, retention are what we look for. Having a small, growing, but very engaged group of early users is always a great thing to have. Showing stickiness for the product and sort of understanding and giving rationale for why it will be difficult or defensible for somebody to come in and compete with you. Those are always welcome things to have insight on.
Excellent.
I would just add to that too. So, I mean, we're the exact opposite. We don't necessarily look at a lot of data just because it's so early and it's just the two of us. And that was the other thing I forgot to mention. You'd think we'd have a large staff after 10 years, but it's really just the two of us. But we're very effective and very efficient. So, I think it's the whole package. I mean, yes, you have to have the data. Yes, you have to back up the story. You have to have the metrics and things like that. But my background is sales. And I think there's also the communication piece behind that. You have to be able to communicate what your company is all about and the problem you're going to solve and how you're going to get there. And especially, with the deluge of emails we get, you have to be able to craft an email that gets our attention if you don't already get like a strong referral from someone. If it's a cold email, you better hit those data points and you better communicate and sell your story to us so we will, take a listen and listen to your pitch and give you feedback and things like that. So I think there's more than just the data story. It's being able to package the entire, sales pitch together.
So earlier this morning, Dave Spector was talking about if you don't get a reply on that first email, to follow up and be a little persistent. Do you guys agree with that point of view? And how persistent should we perhaps be?
I mean, there's a fine line between being persistent and stalker.
Yes.
I mean, I wouldn't stalk. But I mean, I think if you have something of value or something significant has changed from the first time you pitched us or the first time you came to us with an idea, then I would definitely encourage that. If you could show that, you've launched your product from like beta or initial conception to like first release or something like that, and user growth has tripled, or, your revenue has doubled in 2 weeks or something like that, something that's significant, then yes, by all means, definitely reach out to us.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
I'll add one point to that.
Please do.
The absolute best way to get in touch with an investor is to get a warm introduction.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, we as a firm easily could get 1,000 or 2,000 cold emails a year, and we only do 15 deals a year. And I would say I don't think we've ever done a deal that's come in cold. So the absolute best way to get into any firm on this stage, or pretty much any partnership is to go in through a warm introduction. And so, yes, you can craft a perfect email, and you can follow up to that perfect email with more data, but coming from someone that the investor trusts and that knows you is always going to be way more powerful than whatever you write on your own.
What about red flags for founders? What are some red flags that founders should avoid when they're fundraising?
Do you mean as far as investors they're
Yeah.
approaching, or
So this is
in
a
their
poorly
pitches?
phrased. I think what they're trying to say in this
Yeah.
question is, what are some things that entrepreneurs do that raise red flags for you when you're investing? I'll go talk to my editor on this.
Got it. So if you interpret it the other way, investors, one thing I would mention is do references on the investors that you guys are talking to. Just like we do references on founders, you should be doing references on every investor that you're considering taking money from. There is really no substitute, I think, from to talking to other founders in the portfolio. But let's actually ask the question that you asked. Answer the question that you asked. Red flags in pitches. I think that one of the ways that this was an adjustment for me coming from engineering, where you go you're very deep in a very narrow domain. As a venture capitalist, you might hear a pitch on women's shoes in the morning, and then some very technical deep learning company in the afternoon, and then in the evening it might be cybersecurity. So you're never the smartest person in the room, and so we're always sort of trying to triangulate and go deeper with an entrepreneur into their specific domain. And so make sure that you've at least thought through the kinds of questions that are likely to come up. Because when it's never good for me when I'm able to stump an entrepreneur 15 minutes in and raise an issue that they haven't thought about, where I was able to sort of ask the question 15 minutes after hearing the pitch. So that would be one piece of feedback, is make sure you think deeply through the idea.
So I was going to say, can I add to that? So one red flag that we see very early on, as much as I'm saying sell your company, be able to pitch it, articulate everything else, don't oversell it. So a lot of times companies will come to us saying, okay, I'm raising $1 million, and I already have 3 term sheets, and I've soft circled $750,000. And then the conversation continues, maybe a week, 7 days, 10 days, whatever, and then they actually don't produce any term sheets, or they haven't really soft circled the amount that they said that they soft circled. So nothing leaves a bad taste in your mouth stronger than that, because you think at the end of the day you're starting to build a relationship with that person. And if they start off on the wrong foot and they're essentially not giving you the full truth with how they're raising their money and how much they've raised to date, that's not a good sign. So I would definitely, if you really have soft circled a commitment, or you have hard dollars in the bank, be honest with it. If you're having problems raising the round, be honest with that and say, you know what, I've only closed half my round, I need your help. Do you have anyone else that you can introduce me to? That goes a much longer way than saying, oh yeah, you better act fast, or if you don't get your, yes or no to us by midnight, you're out of the round. Then it's like, well, I don't even want to be in the round.
What do you do if you do have, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just saying, in the category of off-putting, I would say complete dismissiveness of competition, whether it's the legacy players who have a $10 billion market cap, and maybe they haven't innovated quickly, but they do have a $10 billion market cap, or even just the other competitors in the space. I think often I hear I haven't seen them in a head-to-head competition in a sales cycle, and it's like, well, you each have 10 customers, so in the universe, you probably haven't come across one another, but you should probably still have a little reverence for the competition. That's one, and I'd say the other is just the sort of defensive attitude. Like you said, entrepreneur generally knows more than we do about deeply in a space, but being open to feedback and maybe the questions, and just you have to have the attitude of being open to questions instead of just thinking oh, you're so stupid.
Can you share some of the areas you guys are excited about or hyped about in terms of where startups are building today, industries or product-wise? What's currently exciting you guys?
So overhyped? I don't know, this may not be a popular opinion, but I think autonomous vehicles, everything. will end up having a steep correction. My personal bet, and I'm willing to make it with anyone in the room, is that we're at least 10 years out from wide commercial availability on these things. I think there's some fundamental still R&D challenges to overcome, let alone the regulatory stuff, let alone all the liability and all of that. So I think that's an area where we've tried to be pretty conservative. We have some investments that stand to benefit if AVs happen, but we haven't made investments that assume that they're going to happen.
What are you excited about?
I would say applications of machine learning and AI, but vertical ones. Nothing that's sort of a horizontal ML as a service type platform that competes directly with the Amazons and the Googles of the world. But anything that's sort of applying data and software to sleepy large industries are areas that we have done a lot in or are pretty excited about.
Open?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I also, one of the industries that we're looking in, we haven't found the ultimate solution for, although it excites me, is the next disruptive space we think is farming and agriculture, ag tech, essentially. We've seen a lot of interesting plays, but we haven't found the right fit. There was one, we know that the market is there. We know that companies are already starting to acquire them. I just read in the news today, John Deere acquired a farming equipment company. So, and it's big money. They acquired it for like $350 million. The name of the company is escaping me, but I remember seeing the deal go through. So I think that's kind of interesting, a disruptive space that has yet to be tapped.
And plus, I love that space because it's feeding people. It's solving like a problem that's very tangible. It's not, let me share a photo quicker on a social network somewhere. I mean, that's a big drive for a lot of people today, is that they want to be working on a product that is actually doing something good in the world. I personally have seen a shift. I don't know if you guys have also witnessed that from the companies who you talk to.
I'll go blockchain. And I would say not in terms of investing dollars, or I have no intention of investing money in terms of deals tomorrow in blockchain technology. I think in terms of areas of interest where I will spend the marginal minute thinking, a lot of it is in this decentralization, blockchain. In the next 100 years, how will this all change? It's fascinating to think about. So it's certainly an area of interest in that regard.
What's one industry that you think is going to have a major impact by blockchain outside of financial?
Oh God. I mean, all of the smart contracts, insurance. I mean, I guess that also falls into financial. What else? I'll get back to you.
It's still early. That's the best part. It's only been around
legal,
for a few years.
Law, legal, lots of,
Are there any big changes you see in the VC industry over the next 5 years? Has it evolved in the past 5 years? What changes have you seen, and where do you see this headed?
I mean, look, so when I joined Softtech a little over 6 years ago, there were 15 micro VC funds. Now there's easily 400 in the United States alone. So I think we've seen a complete, we've seen a large shift in the last, half a decade of early stage capital coming from institutionalized investors of funds that are roughly somewhere in the magnitude of $5 to $100 million. And at the same time, we've also seen crowdfunding become more and more legitimized, right? So you have actually an excessive amount of capital for founders in varying degrees of amounts, and obviously echoes are going to add to that too. I think as a founder, not to say it's easy to raise money, but there are lots and lots of pools of capital to tap into now. The question will be, will we see consolidation amongst a lot of those fund managers that have been out there? And will we see those $5 and $10 million funds turn into $50 and $100 million funds? Will we see the $5 and $10 million funds merge with other $5 and $10 million funds? And will we see those managers go on to be successful? So I think that there's been just a tremendous amount of opportunity at the earliest stages. And I've really watched that kind of grow up around my time out here in the Valley. And I would imagine we're going to continue to see disruption there. And the question will be, will experience matter in all of that? Or will new entrants constantly be coming in, and there's enough deals out there to be done that, to soak up that capital?
The last fun question I'm going to ask before we open it up to Q&A. If you had to invest in one or the other, and I stole this question from you, thank you for the recommendation, so you know exactly what this is. If you had to invest in either Uber or Lyft today, Which one and why?
Oh,
Not knowing any of what was going to happen.
At the last valuation, right?
Yeah.
70
Current
for
valuation.
Uber.
Oh,
What was Lyft's
okay.
last valuation?
Don't
Anybody know?
Like,
Uber?
it was- Yeah.
Pop
Lyft.
quiz.
What was
Oh,
Lyft's?
Lyft. I don't know.
40?
No, it's not that high. Is it that high?
Lyft was 40? No.
No. No,
Uber's
Uber's
last round was
70.
68, I think.
68, okay.
I don't know what Lyft was. Maybe 7? 10? Call it 10. Sounds about right?
Let's just accept that.
Sure.
So then at that valuation, yeah.
I'd invest in Uber. I think the new CEO will be accretive 70 billion, whether that's the appropriate fair market value, I have no idea, but I would invest in Uber.
It's interesting that if you change the head person, it can help fix that culture down below, but unless you make that one major change, nothing's going to be fixed in that company.
I
So
mean,
there's
caveat,
good
I am
potential.
a venture capitalist trying to return money to LPs, so there's no like social good element woven into that answer.
Excellent.
I actually wouldn't invest in either because the amount of money that I could invest would be so small that I would be completely diluted. So I wouldn't do either.
I guess I'll take the moral high road answer and say I probably would invest in Lyft, knowing what I know now, knowing. I think I personally, and granted, we have this new CEO coming on board at Uber, and that does fundamentally change things. But I would personally, when I invest in teams, I want to invest in teams that I believe in and I believe are good people, and so I would probably personally have a difficult time working with Uber given some of the current circumstances.
What I love about all these answers is, if somebody came and presented their startup to all three of you, here are three
Yeah, right.
established companies,
Yeah.
you have three completely different answers, and that's fantastic, right? Like, it's just interesting that you get, it's not three yeses across the board for the same company. That's actually pretty interesting. But you were the
Yeah,
tiebreaker,
tiebreak.
so I cut it
I asked
off
the
there.
question.
What tiebreaker?
I'd probably take Uber. I mean, I think scale and network effects are a real thing in that market. And what's interesting is despite all the bad publicity and the turmoil, Uber's underlying business has actually been very healthy. They had a blip because of Delete Uber, all of that, but it's recovered. And so I think, the network effects will tell.
Excellent. We have time for one or two quick questions, so I'll let whoever pick.
Oh, no.
No? Okay.
Andrea,
You're right here, please.
Okay.
I just want to ask.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome.
You can throw
What
it,
are you
too.
talking into?
Anyway, but I like using this. Probably the last question you guys expected to have come is, when is going to a VC for investment not the appropriate route?
Great
When
question.
you want to go private equity or otherwise? I mean, obviously we all started angel funding as I have, but we skipped all of that. and
You
went
should
to private
bootstrap
equity.
as long as you possibly can. You absolutely should bootstrap your company as long as you possibly can. You retain the most ownership of the company, you have the most control over what you're building, and you'll be calling the shots, right? And there's a point in time in which raising capital will be necessary to scale. And if you believe that venture capital can help you get to venture level returns, then you should go to venture capital. But if you're not aiming to build a $1 billion business, but you can build a really nice $10 million or $100 million business and own the vast majority of that, then stay away from the people on this stage.
Except for me. Talk to me still.
Are there other situations in which it's just the wrong type of money?
Oh, sure. I mean, depends on the industry you're in.
Not
Yeah.
the small side, that's not.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Depends on the industry that you're in. And it could be that you actually get to a certain level scale where you can raise more private equity type money, and you should absolutely do that.
I mean, it's
too.
very expensive money. So if you have another capital source, you should go take it.
One more question. Yes.
The ratio of women on the panel versus women in the audience is startling.
Yes.
Do you want to do anything about that?
What's the question?
All right.
The, do
Do we
you-
want to do something about it?
Yeah, from your position.
Well, I'm
Oh,
pretty sure
yeah,
that
absolutely.
I think by being on,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think we are doing something about it.
That's true.
Great answer. Great. Well, thank you.
I don't know about the folks on this stage, but I've backed at least a third of the founders I've backed have been women.
Yeah, I would agree for XG Ventures as well. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Please, a round of applause for our panelists. And we'll be kicking off a happy hour with food and drinks and more starting right now. So thank you very much for joining.